This video is about MySQL Workbench production setup. In other words, it's about how I was able to connect the MySQL Workbench on my Macintosh here at home to my production server at Liquid Web. This is MySQL Workbench. It's right here. I'm going to turn it on right now so you can see it. Okay? And this is the connection right here which I was able to make. By the way, the version of MySQL I have is 5.5 or something close to it. Let me show it to you so that we know exactly what it is. MySQL version 14.4, distrib 5.5.4. Okay. So I have 5.5.4. So the first thing that I did in order to get Workbench to work was I changed the bind address in my.cnf. I'm going to open it in Vim. etc MySQL mycnf. The part we're interested in is the one right here. Now, what is the bind address? The bind address is for the network interface which MySQL server will listen on. When you set it to 0000, it will listen to all the network interfaces. Now, what are network interfaces? There's ETH0, ETH1, there's loopback. Okay. Now, what is ETH0, ETH1? Those are the network cards in your server machine. Okay. And loopback is not a real network card. Basically, it identifies the machine itself on the network. Okay. So what you're going to need in here for MySQL Workbench to work is to have 0000 so that the MySQL server will listen on all the IP addresses on the machine, and these IP addresses correspond to the network interfaces on the machine. The second thing that you would do after doing this and saving the file is to do service MySQL restart. Okay? So that's the second thing you do. That way all the changes to the configuration for the MySQL server will take effect. And I'm talking about the one that you did to the bind address only. We're gonna make other changes. Now, the third thing, okay, is you're gonna log into production. I'm already logged into production here. And now what you're gonna do is you're gonna first you're gonna log into the MySQL server using the MySQL client, and you're gonna log in as root. And when you log in as root, you're gonna be root at localhost. You're gonna find out that there's more than one root user, okay? There's one for each host which accesses. So there's root at the IP address of my house, and there's root for the local host. You'll see them, don't worry about it. But when we log in as root, we are also selecting the MySQL database. Now, MySQL database is one of the databases on this MySQL server. It just happens to be named MySQL. Okay, so let me log in. Okay, the default database we're in is MySQL. I can show you all the databases if you don't trust me that MySQL is one of the databases. But the one that is selected as the default is MySQL. So let me show you the databases. Show databases. Okay. See, one of our databases is called MySQL. And that's the one that we're using right now. One of the tables in the MySQL database is called user. All right, let me show you all the tables in this database. Show tables. Okay, we have a table in the database MySQL called the table user right here. Okay, that's the table we're interested in. The table user has so many fields or columns in it that if I was to show the entire table, it would look like mumbo jumbo on this screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to show 4 or 5 columns of that table. And this is the command. Select host. So I'm going to show these fields. A field called host, a field called user, a field called grant privileges, a field called show database privileges, a field called super privileges. And these are from the user table. Okay, here they are. So you're asking, what's the third step that I took? The third step was to get this table to look the way it looks like right now. The most important part of that is to have, okay, see, there is more than one record in this table for the root user because the root user can log in from different hosts. So we have one, this host right here at the top, that's the most important one because that corresponds to my house, which is where MySQL Workbench is connecting from. Now, the other important point to note here is when you're playing with this table is that not only do you have to, okay, first of all, the command that you use to add stuff, add users or add rows to this table, you don't just simply add those rows. You have to use some specific command for adding users to the MySQL database. Those commands are specified right here. These are the relevant commands. First, you would create the user, and of course we're not creating another root, but we're creating another root at the specific hosts over here. And when you add that other user, you also give additional fields their values, like grant privileges, show database privileges, all those other ones. Okay? So that's the first step, is to create the user. And this procedure right here, where you have to issue these 2 separate commands, is unique to this version of MySQL Server. Because I believe in older versions, you could just issue 1 command. So here we have 2 commands, this one and this one. Okay, so the first one creates the user. The second one grants all privileges to the user. And you would replace the username with root, and you would replace, instead of localhost, you would use whichever host that you want to add as a table record. Then the last step is you would flush privileges. Now, besides flush privileges, actually before you flush privileges, you're gonna really need to look at this table that I have right here, because there's gonna be a few Y's and there's gonna be a few columns that don't look right. Like they might have an N here and you want it to have a Y. Well, you can use the update command, which is this one over here, to update whichever columns don't look right for you. Okay? And then the last step is you flush privileges. Having done all that, remember I showed you that these are the databases we have. They include a database called MySQL. And note the other databases. Now, when I connect from MySQL Workbench, and I'm going to do that right now, for some reason, I only get 1, 2, 3 databases to show up, whereas I have 1, 2, 3, 4 databases on the database server. This is the particular database that for some reason does not show up over here. Now, doing this video, it's starting to come to my mind what I may have to do. I may have to check and look at all the other fields here for these users with these host names and see if there are some Y's missing where there should, in other words, where there are some N's where there should be Y's. And then I will have to use the update command to update those fields for those records. Okay, it's been a long video, and I think I've covered everything. All right, until next time, goodbye.